Hello there everyone, and welcome to another episode of RPG Horror Story Cringe with D&D Doge. Tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons heavily rely on math in order to be played. Now, you don't need to be a master mathematician, but having a solid foundation of math is a plus. But in today's episode, we have a tale about a dungeon master that thinks a player being good at math is a negative. And many more stories. But before we get into those, Lucky has a special request. But I already gave you two. Fine. I'll give you another one after the video. Plus, I got good news, as I'll be able to get even more treats for Lucky and the other kitties, because today's video actually has a sponsor, and it's none other than Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is the kind of old-school turn-based RPG combat that I grew up with and love to this day. Heck, even Nipsey is digging it.
Yes. This game is fun.
And one of the best things about Raid Shadow Legends is that it's completely free to download and play. There are so many characters to recruit to your party, like Corrado Foxhunter, Julian of the Sacred Order, or, if you're feeling some edge, Countess Lix of the Demon Spawn. And you can recruit all these warriors during Raid's Valentine's Day event, only for new players from the US. But Doge, I hear you ask, Valentine's Day already happened. Well, Raid's got you, as they are running the event all the way up until March 14th, so you still have plenty of time to partake and feel the love. Plus, Raid is even offering a bonus of in-game perks worth a total of $35, including free Epic Champion Jotun, 100k in silver, 50 gems, and 2 epic skill tomes when you click the link in the description or scan the QR code here on the screen. So be sure to give Raid a try today, and thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get right into these stories. Apparently, I am too overqualified to play games with my friends. By Reddit user Ars Torok. My friend invited me to join a 5e game that he is part of. Someone dropped, and several of the players in the game have played with me before. We all know each other, and we get along well, so I accepted, though I have never met the DM before. We both were in the same online community, but never really interacted. Still, the DM has heard of me, and I of him, so it was all good, and both of us see no problem in me joining. The DM suggests a one-on-one meeting ahead of time to create my character and get me caught up on the lore and the setting, so I can easily slide in during the next session. A great idea. So, I'm added to the game's Discord server and Roll20, and we hop onto a call. My character sheet is in order. He and I have been in many games before, so generating the character goes pretty quickly. Tokens are made and uploaded, and a paragraph or two of backstory is hammered out. I am all ready for the next session later in the week. We spend more time just talking about games in general, swapping stories of games long past, both epic tales and horror stories alike. I tell him about a player at an adventure league who threw a temper tantrum, arguing that, on average, a +3 bonus to hit was more effective than having an advantage to hit. I offered to explain to the player how he could easily prove which case was better, but he had none of it. I shrugged and dropped it, not wanting this to turn into a bigger argument than it already was. The DM is suddenly very quiet and reserved. He asks if I ever went to college, and what I majored in. I told him that I was a computer science major, but I tried to dual major in math. The only reason I don't have my math degree is because of booze and other poor life choices. I failed the class that I needed and just gave up, and took my 1 degree and ran. The DM tells me that he is not sure if I'm going to be a good fit for the group, that he is sure that the other players will not get along with me. It's not that there was anything wrong with me, there's just a question of compatibility. I am honestly confused. I have played with most of the other players before, and half were in a game that I was running, but he is suddenly adamant that I cannot be a part of the game. Then, I am quickly removed from the Roll20 and the Discord server. I have been in a horror story or two, so I just don't fight this. It's clear that we are not going to get along, so there is no point in trying to argue. I do want to know what I did wrong, however, or at least what changed his mind. Since I'm not in the Discord server, the call is over and I'm just sitting there. Eventually, the friend that invited me to the game got a straight answer out of the DM. He didn't like that I knew advanced math, and was worried that I would just look up the monsters and calculate the most effective way to play the game, and essentially power game to the point that he couldn't balance around me. He said that he didn't trust people who knew more math than he did. He was sure I was a nice person and wouldn't mind being friends with me, but he just can't play tabletop RPGs with anyone who is going to use math to ruin the game. I'm not sure. Maybe he thought I was being overly condescending somehow. That, or honestly, he really doesn't like people who know math. Regardless, as we often say, no D&D is better than bad D&D. That has to be one of the most ridiculous reasons to not have someone join a campaign. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons, and tabletop RPGs in general, are primarily math-based, but there's also a whole lot of luck thrown in there as well. What did this DM think OP was going to do? Goodwill Hunting the monsters and BBEGs to death? Perhaps the DM just has a superiority complex, and the idea of being around someone who might be as good, if not better at math, around him, just made him feel insecure. Or maybe he was actually the subject of the horror story that OP told him, but OP just didn't remember it was him. And the DM telling OP that he couldn't play was just his way of saying, how about them apples? Either way, at least OP wasn't too disappointed, as he knew if this DM was willing to part ways with a new player over something so petty, he would probably do other petty things in game as a DM. Let's move on. Player played a god, literally. By Reddit user, Available Regret 304. I remember this one time, our DM created this fantastic world. He put a lot of effort into it, created religions, cults, included representation perfectly, even drew his own cities. And even though he played a role in this little horror story, I still have to give him credit for all of the work he put into it. Of course, I wanted to participate and created my character, a pretty vanilla guy who wanted to become a hero to escape his boring life. Another guy played a wizard who was on some kind of mission to gain knowledge, and another one played a homeless rogue who wanted to steal from the rich to feed the poor. Very Robin Hood-y. A note, I was the only girl playing in that group full of guys, and they were so cool and welcoming, it made me restore my faith in humanity. So, and then there was that guy. That guy couldn't stand it when something wasn't about him. He interrupted others with small little snarky comments that made me roll my eyes. But okay, the others were super cool, so I could look over it. I thought I could live with it, but then that guy took us on that quest. First of all, I was new to D&D, so I didn't know all the class features. I didn't know the races and their benefits. Plus, our DM was very creative to include homebrew stuff, so I didn't mind that guy's character dealing more damage, or having a lot of benefits, like re-rolling when we others didn't. Some players raised their concerns, but they also didn't really get into D&D yet, so we thought he just picked a class that was good with his race. Looking back, he kinda could do anything. He had cleric features, artificer features, barbarian features. I can't even recall everything. It was just a lot, and we were only playing on level 4. When we asked him what the hell he was playing, he answered in character, "You'll never understand my ways," with a big grin. Story-wise, everything was somehow about him, even the smallest things. Rescuing a city? He's been there, leaving an ex-lover who died later. Crossing the sea via a ship? He has had some sea adventures, and knew exactly where to go. Calming a widow? He spoke to her in such a gentle and beautiful voice that she immediately calmed down and forgot her husband just got ripped into pieces by an orc chief. Without a roll. Just like that. It was tiring after some time. Why even try when that guy's character could do everything anyways? But again, DM was putting a lot of work into his campaign, so I thought it was fine and we would be okay, somehow. Oh, how wrong I was. When we did get that guy's personal quest, he revealed that he was one of the gods that went missing a few thousand years ago, and that he walks among the mortals to regain his full power again, to take his rightful place among the other gods again. And then, it somehow all made sense. How that guy always talked down to us. How he didn't think he needed to pay attention. How he somehow could do everything and anything with all of these different class features. That's why he could persuade everybody. He knew everything regarding his religion, of course. He always played oh so mysteriously, saying stuff like, "You'll learn, my child," and "I've seen places far beyond your understanding," when talking to someone. How in the world was that fair in any way regarding mine and the other players' characters? I couldn't really say anything, despite okay. But another player started an argument that it wasn't fair to benefit one player, and that we should have known that. A whole argument started, and our game unfortunately fell apart. But a few weeks later, the DM contacted us and apologized. We're cool with each other now, but that guy blocked all of us, claiming that we ruined an amazing experience since he put a lot of work into his character, and that we should have just went with it. Yeah, sure, like I want to live in your power fantasy. He then just blocked us when we told him that we wished to be treated as equals, and that it wasn't fun for us feeling like minions in our own game. He said we were stuck up, and that was the last time I ever heard from him. And hopefully, it will stay this way. Yeah, I have to agree with OP at the beginning there. The DM definitely had a role to play in all of this. He should have never let that guy play, whatever that was. Though maybe he's just too nice, and unfortunately a bit of a pushover. So people like that guy can manipulate them to get what they want. Thankfully, it sounds like the rest of the group still talk to each other, and hopefully they'll all start a new game where a literal god isn't pushing them around. Let's move on to the next one. I'm a new DM, and players aren't even playing the game anymore by Session 2. By Reddit user, I am Bloth Hunter. My friends all expressed interest in playing D&D, so I set up and prepped for about a week and a half. Got the first chapter, about 4-ish hours, prepped for Lost Mine of Phandelver. The first session went great. Everyone was attentive and participated in the fight, though it went very slow because we are all new and learning the rules. Session 1 ends at Cragmaw Hideout, with them looking into the cave. Everyone had fun and was thanking me and actively wanted a second session. Session 2, 1 week later. They made it into the first room with the wolves, and one player is asleep at the table, like cannot keep his eyes open with his head bobbing. 2 of the girls are scrolling on their phones, having an active conversation about something entirely different, while the only 2 members who were participating were discussing what they should do next. One player starts throwing dice and a hat at the sleeping player, and goes on a smoke break 3 times in the middle of the session, without participating. The session lasted 3 hours, and the group was only able to make it to the room with the water dam, because only 2 players were actually playing. While I was actively trying to get everyone to participate, both of the girls who were talking about other shit leave right in the middle of it, with one saying that she's going to bed and we can just play for her, and the other leaves to sit down somewhere else, says she wants to continue playing, and then the second she sits back down, goes, "Actually, I'm going to bed too," and leaves. I offer to continue for the remaining 3 players, and I tell them that I'll scale it down a little for them, and they're all interested. The second we sit back down, the player who was throwing dice also goes, "Yeah, I changed my mind, I'm out of here," and starts packing up his dice. The 2 girls who left early just left their notes and dice sitting on the table. And that leaves the 2 players who carried the entire game and I shrugging at each other, and silently packing up. Both of the players who played texted me after the session, apologizing for everyone else, and telling me that they had fun and appreciated my effort, but the other players didn't say a word after the session. I don't think I care enough to have a session 3. Obviously, you guys know the effort that goes into prepping for a session. I feel disrespected, and I'm rather annoyed, and I don't see myself playing this game again in the future. Yeah, I wouldn't host for any of those players again either. They showed massive disrespect for you and your time. If anything, I would say not to give up on DMing though. You should stay in touch with the 2 players who seem to actually care, and just DM for them. And if possible, find different people to add to the party that actually want to play the game. Hopefully, this experience hasn't soured OP's taste for this great hobby. Let's move on to the next one. DM kicks me because speaking German is anti-Semitic? By Reddit user CuriousWombat42. Not a long story, but a weird one. So, I joined a 5e group that plays over voice chat. Just basic stuff, no details that matter for the story. My character speaks in a German accent because I myself have a thick German accent due to being German. The first session runs decently. The only thing that irks me is the DM telling me to lay off that Nazi voice. Again, I'm not doing much of a character voice. That is just how I sound over the microphone. I tell them that it's my natural accent, but try to actively speak more smoothly from then on. The second session comes around, and we are fighting some slavers to free the slaves, though the dice are against us. Some cages are on fire, and hit points are running low. I am slightly stressed at this point. Our sorcerer is asked to make a roll to try and stop the slaves from burning, and rolls a 1. I let out a "oh way," anticipating bad things. Then, the DM stops the game to berate me. "How can you say oh vey? That is Jewish cultural appropriation." I reply that is a German expression as well, which only makes them accuse me even harder of taking away Jewish heritage, while adding a wonderful bit of, "You would enjoy seeing more slaves burnt, wouldn't you?" To that tirade, I end the Discord chat, text a short farewell, and leave the server. There are always other games anyway. What? I mean, that's just... what? It was OP's native accent. And as for saying oy vey, I mean, I grew up around people that said that, and I even use that phrase from time to time. It sounds to me like this DM just had a stick shoved way up his tushes, and was basically yelling at OP to stop being German. But at least OP knew that it was time to just get out of there after the DM started being a schmuck. Let's move on. And as it's Friday, it's time for a glory story to help close out the week. My players took care of a deadly encounter that was twice their level in 2 turns. By Reddit user The Bayan Empire. The players were being employed by the ferryman. In my campaign, he's a lesser deity who isn't the god of death, or even the entity that brings the dead into the underworld. He's literally just a guy who takes souls from one place in the underworld to another. His domain is just the boat and the river Styx, and he only has 1 follower, besides the players. He acts more like an angel for the real god of death, but he's technically a deity. He asked the players to get a pile of platinum coins off his boat. The ferryman is constantly fishing stuff out of the river, since that's his only other job. But sometimes he can't do it by himself, so he asks people to do it for him. He can't touch the platinum, since no fiend can in my campaign. The platinum was cursed, and the players knew it. So cautiously, my level 5 players started the fight by shifting the coins, and from a small pile, as if it was hiding in it, a bone devil appears, ready to rend the souls of anyone nearby. It was able to gather 500 platinum coins, even without touching it, for a deal that went sour, and he wasn't leaving without a soul. They weren't intended to beat the Bone Devil, just survive for 10 turns, while the ferryman brought the boat to the 9 hells to send the devil back from where it came from, taking actions to defend or try to convince the apathetic ferryman to speed up. After a turn for the players to get into a position they want, which I gave to prevent them from getting wiped out the first turn, they also spend their action with casting a fire spell, but the Bone Devil is immune, so it doesn't do anything. My Artificer casts Sickening Ray. Again, Bone Devil is immune and it doesn't do anything. And my Druid dodges to make sure that he doesn't die if he's attacked. The Bone Devil immediately tries to attack my Warcaster, a homebrew class. As a reaction, he casts Shield. The first attack of the Bone Devil fails, since his plate armor plus 5 is a 23, and the Bone Devil would need to roll a 15 or higher with his bonuses. Warcaster casts an Eldritch Blast with double shot, and rolls a 12 and an 11. This doesn't damage the Bone Devil, but I said it's slightly moved, just in order to show that it's not immune from force damage, since none of their attacks did anything to it, and they thought that it was immune to everything and just needed to be insured. Because they moved the Bone Devil slightly, it gave my player an idea. On his turn, he yelled, "Let's push him off the boat!" I never thought of that, and before the Warcaster had another turn, my Artificer cast Grease on the floor where the Bone Devil was, so he falls prone. My Druid, then, just summons 4 effing apes and commands them to push the Bone Devil. He was at the edge of this medium-sized boat, only 30 feet wide, and the Bone Devil has disadvantage on the roll. He rolls a 12, and the 4 apes get to add their strength together, coming out to 66. So they pushed the Bone Devil into the river. The river Styx, in my world, will dissolve a creature's soul like sand against a strong wave. In the underworld, fiends are only their soul. Thus, the Bone Devil is killed instantly. 2 turns, no damage, no luck involved. I give my players strong items because I think it's cool what they do, though this time it didn't matter, as none of the special items were used. So it was a challenge rating 9 encounter, made trivial. It's stuff like this that really makes me love tabletop RPGs. A situation can look dire, but some quick thinking can turn things pretty quickly to the party's favor. These players using the in-game knowledge about the river and the fact that fiends are incorporeal is a great example of this. Hopefully, OP gave out some DM inspiration to some of those players. But that is all we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.